Hello, folks. We're getting right into it today. Gonna check in with kitties and then right into the programming. I did forget to post the streams early today, so forgive me if you didn't notice they were gonna happen. Let's see here. We do have Mason taking over the pillow on the bed, and we have Sky over here on the table. One thing I did notice is there's a little plush stairway leading up to the bed, kind of to the right of where Mason is. I put that there when Sherbet was having that paw trouble. And apparently Sammy likes to sit on it. Once I got done with those and I put them elsewhere, Sammy now uses the kind of stacked and stored configuration of those stairs as a spot. So I might look at moving one of the cameras over to point at that. I don't know yet. We generally don't get a lot of them over in the play space, and I'm really considering moving that to try to catch another kitty. But with that said, last time we started working on the interaction code. This is me switching the camera over to a cat. This is the logic that's going to fire whenever something, well, interacts with something else, primarily when it bumps into something else. Each entity will essentially do this. They will, the first entity will say, hey, I collided with you. Here's the stuff that I send out when I collide. The other entity will receive each of those messages and say, okay, this is a damage type message. Do I have anything that interprets that type of message? If it does, it goes through the list, and the first thing in its list of ways to interpret messages that consumes it. Nothing else needs to see it. And then we move along. I may ultimately make it so it goes through the whole list in case there are duplicate handlers. Maybe there are multiple instances of that kind of thing. But we'll see. What this means is that, for example, in that damage example, the concept of being able to inflict harm and the concept of being able to take harm from, like, attacks in the game is dependent on those modules. Which means the way that damage is dealt and taken, the values that represent that, can be part of those modules. They don't need to be part of the individual entities. This is good because it prevents me from having to make a bunch of special case entities and keep track of them. Like, I don't need destructible scenery to be considered an entity that can take damage but can't deal damage and can't move. Right now, everything can move if it has movement attached to it. Under this model, everything can take damage if it has damage attached, the damageable attached to it. Everything can deal damage if it has that attached to it. This will also help with some interesting things like how bullets in some games can pierce targets. Hey there, Blue. Welcome. Just talking about where we left off and where we're headed today. Bullet piercing is something you see in a lot of these games where a shot can punch through multiple targets, giving you a little more, essentially increasing your damage, increasing the area effect of a given attack. Instead of just stopping on one target, it might be able to hit multiple. We could bake that into the way a bullet deals damage, is that if it strikes something and it hurt that thing, then it can reduce the number of hits it can do remaining. It can trigger its own iframe so it doesn't multi-hit the same target a couple of times. But there might be types of attack that do that. And then if it has hits left, it continues. if it runs out of hits, it triggers the self-removal. And hello, Daniel. Welcome. I was wondering what Sammy was crying about in the background there. All right. Carpal tunnel is flaring up today, so I might be even slower at the typing. Alright, so last time we got the skeleton in place for an interaction type object. So each interaction type will report what it is. And some of these will be more generic. So this might be a deals damage type interaction. On the other end of it, I'm actually thinking about that. So each type of interaction, we're going to have to set up a pool for this so that we can save resources on creation and deletion. We want there to be generic message types, but we don't want... Yeah. Okay, we're going to need to add a separate type here. So an interaction currently, let's go into the entity here. When we receive an interaction, we have a type and a payload. This is the type of payload it is. It is not the type of interaction. This is a string. Let's return. We're gonna return something there. These are internal functions. Quickly here. Okay. We changed that around because nothing outside should be calling these. This is part of a generic internal method here. Handle result gets overridden to say, like, okay, if I passed something if I sent damage to something and it does not, nothing in that object responds to the damage, then I don't want to treat it as if I actually landed a hit. So if it's a piercing bullet and it hits something that doesn't get hit by the bullet, then it shouldn't count for the number of targets it can hit. That sort of thing. Okay, that gets called. We need to get payload types here. It's going to be such a long constant name. So these are the types. So string. This will be a... Okay, so this is where it gets generic, is the payload type can be generic. Whether a bullet is sending the damage or a monster is sending the damage or anything like that, in general, that's going to be generic. This is an instance of damage. But the way that a bullet sends the hit, the way that a monster sends the hit, those will be different. Talking about that, we're going to say enemy hit. We don't need player hit because the player currently doesn't retaliate. We may add reflected damage later, but right now there's just the damage payload. Okay. This will be an interaction, but it never sends a payload, right? Okay, let's think on that, because right now it gets called to deliver interaction. And one of the possibilities is that it does not deliver interactions. So we can have a little built in for this. By default, they don't deliver interactions. Oh, wait, no, that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. Okay. So my thought process was, well, what if something that gets called upon to send and it doesn't send. It doesn't have any relevant information to send. Well, it shouldn't be in the send list then. I could have some safety checks for that to make sure they don't get there, but having things like undefined here and a null payload, I think are going to be ways we can handle that. I may make this generic as well, such that if the payload, if the type that comes in is undefined, if the payload that comes in is undefined, then we can have it self-destruct. I wonder if there's a plugin I can get that'll just type things into translation software for me. That'd be cool. Right, KitKat, hello. I do only read and speak English. I will translate maybe once or twice, and less often as the stream goes along, so I will interpret a couple of them, but after that I probably won't. But regardless, welcome. Let's see. Not yet on that lunar, but I think an enemy that represents a mob is probably going to be a thing. Okay. Int is returns rejected by default. it has the same variable list. And this one returns that with it. Ah. Strange entry there, Anna. And hello, Palo. Salt as an integer is equal to interaction rejected. If type is not equal. For those that are curious, we are writing a game right now. We're making a Vampire Survivors style game. And the thing that we're doing specifically at the moment is we're writing the code that makes it so things interact. Italian. I don't remember if we've ever had somebody from Italy on the stream. But again, regardless, welcome. But this is the logic that has things, how they interact when they bump into each other. Does not equal distance fraction type undefined and payload null. Result is equal to handle this. Turn result. This is a 2D game. Handle receive. Handle result. Handle deliver result. Hey there, King. Here, let me show you where we currently are. We're not. This is with some of the logic removed. See how they don't. Nothing happens if they get hit. We had some placeholder logic in there, but that is currently removed to work on this part. Might have to have some additional avoidance logic for the player to see if we can get that working. I'm going to take this, that there, and then we're going to have the result here. If entity, then do this is equal to rejected target. Nice little placeholder. If the entity comes in as null, then we don't do anything with it. Same way in this case, if we have undefined and a payload, then we will handle it. Yeah, I think the user interface is going to be a hassle. Right now we've got that real clunky two buttons placeholder. Just to, as much it's to get the skeleton in place. Okay, so we have the receive flow. Now we need to have, for overrides within an object, it's payload type get payload. So these are overrides. Deliver doesn't override. And receive does not override. So all those do. We're just gonna move some stuff around here. That was weird. Why didn't it take the rest of the function with it? It's a single collapsed line. Come on now. Deliver is static. And receive is static. It's not convenient at all. All right, so we have deliver and receive. These are fixed functions. I don't know if I can actually make them static. Don't know if I really want to. Let's not make them static. They can't be static because they have to rely on particular members of the child class. Okay. Okay, so these need to be overridden in a child. Let's get our constant for a undefined payload here. Action. Oh, big, long, constant name, but we'll deal with it. All right, so this is the default of all of them. We don't know what type it is. This is for pooling purposes. We'll get to that in just a moment. This one returns whatever data type it needs. As part of the process of creating an interaction, it's probably going to have within its child type, within the inheriting class, it's going to have ideally some sort of internal object that it will pass along. But we'll see how I can do that. Because I'd like to have a defined class, but then I don't want to have too many instances of that kind of thing. But if each object carries its own payload object with it and just passes it around by reference, we shouldn't really have a problem as far as garbage collection any more than normal, because that entity, the entity that represents the payload, won't be getting created and deleted willy-nilly. Yeah. doesn't receive interaction. Let's do the full run here. Doesn't have... What other programming languages? I have done programming in C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, a little in Lua, some basic, some Visual Basic. What else? Some very, like, platform specific languages. Messed with a lot of different things, you know, HTML. Whatever became relevant at the time. Okay, does not override these. We'll leave that by default. Not deliver. This is entirely a receiving one. Get, don't send, remove signal. Why am I not using C#? Twofold. I wanted to learn GD script. The other is the direct system interactions as far as Godot is concerned. The rendering and physics engine kind of stuff is supposedly based on testing. Other people running the testing. GD script is faster at interacting with the actual Godot systems. For math and like collection handling and whatnot, C# is faster. Additionally, from a development interface, kind of a IDE and workflow perspective, the GD script is faster. I don't have to go to an external IDE, edit it there, fully compile it, make sure the DLL is updated properly, and then interact with it there. So there's some benefits. Will I always use GD script and no C#? Absolutely not. Longer term, potentially when we get more towards some optimizations and maybe some other things, C# will definitely be attractive. Again, fast calculations and data manipulation, hands down, by default, way faster in C#. You can make the GD script stuff faster, but it requires extra work. As far as making the C# interaction with Godot's physics stuff faster, I don't think you actually can. But I'm not that experienced in it. Okay, many in there. Why am I not using Unity? Because I decided to pull the trigger on this project right about the time Unity decided to make everybody hate them. So there's that. And Godot was interesting to me. I mean, a community-driven project, that kind of thing has frequently produced really good industry standard software like Blender. So that's good. As far as AI, from a development perspective and from a asset generation perspective, I feel like AI is simultaneously grossly overhyped and additionally is something that I think the term would be creatively bankrupt. Like, all this sprite art I'm making myself. The assertion that, well, I have to use AI because I can't afford an artist, then use art that you can make. You are not handcuffed to the concept of making something that is full 3D high fidelity or similar. You can do other stuff. You can use ASCII art if you need to. And hello, Pickle. Welcome. As far as code generation with AI, I've spoken about that on a couple of streams now. Our kitties are escaping camera. Just a second. I've spoken about that on a couple of streams now, and the problem with any sort of code generation with AI is the lack of resultant decision information. So why particular things were done and how they're supposed to interact is not something that the AI produces. Even calling it an AI is a gross calling them AIs is another problem ultimately, in that it invokes images of, like, you know, intelligent droids like me. But they're not. They're not even remotely that. We use terms like, oh, well, we train them, they learn. No, they don't. They don't think of things. They don't create things. They spit out results based on the data sets that they have been given. The algorithm takes a bunch of data and converts it into what amounts to a series of shapes. And when you request particular combinations of shapes, it's going to take those and it's going to say, okay, based on, again, it doesn't say, but based on the request, I'm going to take these things and I'm going to try to make them fit what you said. So this shape has these properties, this shape has these properties, and I've seen them overlap in this way. So here is a shape that seems to meet your requirements. It doesn't know anything about that shape. It doesn't understand that shape. It just knows that it doesn't know. Again, we're anthropomorphizing, and that's part of the problem with the hype. But it doesn't know the result. It doesn't understand the result. All it understands, all it is aware of, is that this result seems to fit the request. That is why we get the fingers problem in AI art. It doesn't understand what a hand is. It doesn't understand what fingers are. It doesn't understand how they work. It just knows that fingers and hands should be things that appear, and that as long as a hand has fingers, it should be okay. Oftentimes what happens is that in order to mitigate that, human beings on the other side go in and either post-correct it in order to fuel the hype with false information, or prior to that, in the data set, they massively curate it, very, very carefully curate it, and manually adjust the results, which is not a machine learning system. The same is true with code. It doesn't understand what it's producing. It doesn't know how you're supposed to test it, how it's supposed to connect with all of your other systems. So whatever it produces is highly suspect. It is the equivalent of going online, entering a query in a search engine for a particular result. Let's say you use GitHub to narrow it down. Taking whatever code is resultant from that and slapping it into yours and saying, this works now. You are still going to have to go in and connect all of the wires and make sure everything works. You are going to have to review all of that code. And that's going to mean that you might as well have written it yourself. Read it, understand it, uh, get an idea of what it's supposed to do. Perhaps use a third-party library, but you need to know an end user, an end producer of the code needs to know what it's doing. Because only then do you know that you can test it properly, that it works properly, that it's not going to light production on fire as soon as it hits live. Now, as far as use cases that I think the current generative systems are good for, that these limited language models are good for, assistance, like raw assistance. So I want to make, like, I am currently entering code, and IntelliType gives me some values based on exactly what I'm entering, like string completion. Hey there, Cookie Cat. Welcome. I'm currently showing the cat cams because we're having a not what I'm directly coding discussion. But we could have a kind of an AI IntelliType kind of thing that when I'm entering values, it could try to extrapolate based on surrounding context clues what I am about to write. Hey, you're going to try to write a function call to this method, and you have these variables around you that fit that. So, hey, do you want me to fill in that line for you? You seem to be writing a for loop that might iterate on these things. Hey, I could suggest that to you. That's a really good use case, and it also would leverage the strengths of those kind of systems, but locally targeted, you know? Same with AI art. We have a lot of tools that are using that aren't just wholesale generating the image by smashing other people's art together. Again, it's not learning to draw. It's not learning how art works. It is not learning in the way that human artists do. It is taking images, generating basic shapes off of them, and then smooshing them together. The result is mostly coherent, but all of the AI artifacts that we've come to know and love are the result of that lack of understanding. But there are tools like remove this background for me. Replace this background with this one, or take this part of the road here and extend it forward. Those I think are great artist assistance tools. That's where I think we should go. But the way the hype chain is pushing people to go is this idea that we can replace everything with robots, and it will happen in the next couple of years, and everything's going to be amazing and sci-fi, and you should pay me money. But we've been saying that everything is going to be replaced with robots and AI, and everything's going to be amazing, and that you should pay me money for decades at this point. Like, longer than most of the people talking about it have been alive. We have been making those same claims. Hello, Prince. And hello again, everybody that has shown up. Okay, back to coding. That has been my opinion on artificial intelligence once again. Okay, so we have the die interaction. If the die interaction receives any signal right now, it just drops dead. We're doing well today. I did mention carpal tunnel is flaring up a little bit, so that will interfere with the rate of my typing, and I will have to delay now and again. Stretch the arm and whatnot. Okay, so we have that, and now we need... So we have the interaction bullet hit here. So that... Clear all that out, and we're going to take... There's a way to create templates for classes in this, and I haven't stopped to take a look at how to do it. Hey there, Cheesy. Welcome to the broadcast. Creates a damage payload. It is a type bullet hit. So we'll need to do something here. We'll need to do something here. Doesn't receive. We are making a game. We have been using some placeholder logic for when objects touch each other. We're writing the actual logic now. So nothing will, everything runs through all other objects. It's going to be a Vampire Survivor style game, Cheesy. So, monsters running in from the side, you firing bullets out and wildly to try to stop them. Sometimes called a bullet heaven. We've been spending a lot of time on the infrastructure of it because there are nuances to it. There's a lot of extra footwork going on for the nuances of it. And one of those nuances is, if you look at how those little projectiles, little wind-up mice are moving, that is a chain of customizable logic, in that spread is not hard-coded into them or anything like that. They're being told spawn on the player. They're being told choose a random direction and move in a straight line once you've got it. But when you spawn, also spawn in a fan of 3. Every aspect of that can be changed around, swapped out, all of that. And what we want to be able to do is do that kind of on the fly. So that during the game, if I get an upgrade, I could take that same projectile and say, okay, but make it fire 4 projectiles at once. Or instead of a spread, fire in a starburst. Or move faster, home targets, all of that stuff you'll be able to socket around. And one of the things we want to do for testing, once we've got these interactions working, is to start having the player actually have a visual interaction for that. Will it be the type of the platform that we're going to be releasing on is not 100% determined yet, but I feel pretty confident that the first one that we would shoot for, if it gets done, is probably Steam. Of all of the delivery platforms that can be commercial, that is the easiest to approach. Nice, standard, very, very transparent in how it will work. If it takes off from there, I am building it like the way that I'm setting up the compiler is such that, well, the configuration I'm using for the build is one that can be extended to other platforms like mobile. Well, thanks for joining us, Paulo. Hope you have a good day. I mean, it has a lot of chaff games, Lunar, but at the same time, I don't think iOS and the Google Play Store is really any better. I don't think itch.io has really anything better going for it. And I'm pretty sure Epic Game Store is just fine with the idea of it having chaff games on it, as long as they use Unreal Engine. At the moment, Cheesy, I'm using Godot, Godot 4.2. I kind of like it. I haven't used GameMaker before, but most of the platforms that aren't like aimed towards super high fidelity 3D, like your high Unreal engines, are pretty accessible. Yep. I mean, personally, ultimately, I have one problem with the Epic Game Store. And that's that it's a terrible store. Why is it so hard to store? That's your job. That's your one job. It's hard to search. It refreshes the pages on you randomly. It's a pain to work with the cart. Why do you make it so hard to give for me to give you money? Hey there, Skia. Cheesy Godot is it's effectively a community developed game in game development platform. So the source is out there. You can customize it yourself, but it is a you can write it in scripting. You can write it in C#. It uses a node and tree kind of structure for flow. I'm largely avoiding most of the node and tree structure. I'm using a more efficient underpinning to it in theory. Train of thought has derailed. But yeah, this is Godot engine. Okay, so the bullet hit. First, we need to come up with the concept of a payload. Yeah, I think... Fine, it inherits object. Not caps. Keep with the naming conventions, folks. Okay, so the payload objects are not meant to extend anything. They are meant to be entirely custom. Welcome back, King. And hello, maybe. Oof. Payload objects are going to be entirely custom in how they operate. Is the code coming along? We're getting there. We are in the process of making the first interaction. So we've removed some of the words and things. We've removed some of the placeholder logic, and we're putting back in more of where I want it to be. So this is an object that's going to deliver the information about damage dealt. Some time ago, when we had the preliminary of this that wasn't performing near as well as we wanted it to, we had an attack object. We're not doing that this time. Oh, variable damage amount is an integer to 0. Let's see. We're just about the hour mark, folks. I'm going to go and I'm going to get some anti-inflammatories. Be right back. Easy. All right. It's going to take a while for that to set in, but might as well get onto it. We should actually have a Twitch stream going, King. Okay, so damage payload just has a damage amount. Then the bullet hit, we are going to say damage each one has its own, and we don't need to worry about resetting it because every time we do this, we are going to this will not be how it works going forward. There will be other markers in there. I mean, ultimately, I might make this a float. Let's make this a float. Okay. Now, all right, Skia, thanks for joining us. Okay, so what this is doing is within a bullet hit, it has its own payload object. It has one payload damage object. This should mitigate garbage collection cost because this is a one-to-one. When this interaction goes away, it takes its payload with it. It doesn't make a new payload object every time it interacts. We just have the one. It's going to be passed around by reference. That should be okay. There will be other traits to this that will do handle delivery result in it. Okay. So then interactions should be resources, right? Yes. Anything else we need to set on them? I don't think so. So in an entity, we need an entity template. Category. of interaction. There's a fun thing you can do in Godot, for those not familiar with it, is uh, for any object that you can touch either as a resource or in the UI. So it is something represented within the node tree. I can set up configuration for it, so it can make it kind of drag and drop, toggle, that kind of thing. And then when I use it in the game, those values are reflected. This is what I'm using to make things like, this is what the blob creature looks like, this is how its frames are set up, that kind of thing. So now we have our incoming and outgoing interactions. We need to set this up in the entity creation logic. Currently for movement. Let's take a look at how we're setting up the movement during that process. Okay, that's right. So we're passing in the template that we receive to the movement pool. How do I make a PNG? Or how does one make a PNG? I mean, largely you use some software for image editing software, and you save it as a PNG. The ones that I am using, I've been making through things like Sprite and Krita. For the art in this game, these are 16 by 16 sprites, so 16 pixels across and tall and wide. I've considered 32 by 32, but for the moment, we're sticking with the chunkiest pixel art, Okay, so we need our interaction pool before we go any further, because we want to have the ability to create them and pool them so we don't mess up there. So let's make a new pool type. Pool objects are global entities where whenever we create something, we get it from the pool, and when we're done with that object, we give it back to the pool. So if we create something from the pool, it's going to look at its list of things that it has in it, and if it has a similar one, it will just kind of wipe the slate of that one and hand it to you. That way, we are not deleting objects that we're creating until we're completely done with the game session. The reason we do this is that garbage collection, the process of cleaning up all of those objects that we're throwing away, is actually very expensive. We have stripped down most of the objects we're using to be the minimum type of object. There are a lot of them that are resources because of the nature of how I'm using them, but still, if we don't delete them, it doesn't really cost us much. So we just stack them up, Okay, so create an interaction pool. Now we're going to use the movement pool as a basis here. So, since it's a global entity, it has to be a node. When the game starts, let's actually see if we can do this. So we're going to pan back over to the IDE here. And if we look at the tree that results from the game, so core is the root node of the game right now. And then the game is running, so the game node is attached and operating. We can see the floor tiles, where things are spawning. We have the different zones. So this is how we're handling collision. This is the kind of low-level trickery that we're doing to make it so it's extra efficient. We have where the camera is. Technically, the menu exists. There is a UI. There's numbers in the upper left. It's not end state. It's debugging. But these are all of our global objects. They have to be nodes because they have to live in the tree. And because they're in the top level, in the root, everything can access them, or everything accesses them by their name. So this has to be a node so that everything can reach it. Now, so that this whole operation works more like. I'm going to close other tabs first. We're going to open the movement pool again. Oh, no, we copied this, didn't we? Copy. So the dictionary in this case, the collection of pools, is broken apart into is a series of arrays that are identified by the type of interaction. Hey there, Shotgun. Welcome. So we're going to want to have get pool here. It's going to be an interaction type. Do I need... No, we're just going to call it type. We don't need to know. If you would like to donate to the stream, that is always appreciated. Never required. The channel also has memberships available if you'd like that. Gets you access to some emotes. Okay, so we have the pool. If we request the pool and it's not there, we make it and we return that pool so that it's empty. Okay. Hey there, Shadow. Oh, well. Thank you very much, Shaka. I appreciate that. Okay, so we create, it gets a template, it returns interaction. Let's see. The orange and white kitty that you can see right now is Mason. Should be able to see at least 3 cats. Let's see here. So, let's see. You're in short form view. So in the upper left is Sky kind of laying across Ember like a pillow. Um, let's see. Mason is on the bed, and then in the window, can't really see her coloration too clearly because of the glare, but that's Sammy. She's a little black and white tuxedo. Not visible is Sherbet, who has a similar coloration to Mason, but is Mason is more symmetrical in pattern. Ah, yeah, Shadow. The big fluffy kind of gray and white one is Sky. The stripy orange and white and kind of mottled color is Ember. I have 5 cats. The cat cam array is used to keep track of them. This is a deep duplicate. Yep. Really? Huh. I have that backwards? So there are 2 versions of the stream going at once. There is one that is in a full 16:9 ratio, so it fills the screen. And there is another that is in 9:16 ratio, so kind of like if you were holding a phone vertical. Each of the streams should have a link to the top. This is for YouTube. A link at the top to jump to the other one. So if you're in an environment where you can watch in widescreen mode and want to see the full stream screen, you can use that link to jump to it. That can also be why I seem to be talking to somebody you can't see now and again, is there are 3 chats going. I will say that tall form tends to have more people chatting. Okay. Interaction. Okay. So now in interactions, we need a set template values, which we definitely don't have in the interaction object. Where did I put that? There we go. All right, Shotgun, thanks for swinging through, and thanks again for the super chat. Okay, let's look at a movement object so that I am remembering how I did this. Let's set template values. Okay, it's dependent on the exact type, but for the most part, most of them don't have a lot to that. So let's put that in base interaction as well. Do I play VR? I don't have any VR equipment. Some time ago, I tried to have some VR equipment. This is before I was streaming. But I could never get it working properly or consistently. Would I in the future? Maybe. But for now, no. Okay, so what this lets us do is if we have special values that we need to update in our interaction, we can do it here when we copy it over top of another one. Okay. So this is our pool minimum. That's still true. Pop front, yes. So create. Need the release logic. Our interaction objects. No, I don't have any VR stuff, Shadow. Current interaction is equal to interaction. Okay, no, this is for the chain. This is for deleting a movement chain, so we don't need that. Yes, man, I am coding. We're making a game. Get the pool. Then if the pool size is below the limit, we need to update that. Okay, constants. We're making a Bullet Heaven style game or a Vampire Survivor style game, whichever is familiar to you. Okay. All right, that should give us an interaction pool to use. Which means we can go into... have our entity template set up. Now we need our... doing any of our movement creation here. Okay, we have our create movement chain there. Sanity, let's be consistent here. So then could factor this over to its own thing, and I think I want to. So this function takes a template and returns movement. function that is create interactions. It's an entity template to use as an entity template, and it returns an array of interactions. That in there first. Doesn't really help for this to be static, because this is the only place that uses it. We could just do this. And thank you again, Shotgun. Thank you again. It's a sticker, if I recall correctly. Thank you. Are you located in the UK? Those seem to be pounds. You need to do it that way. Internally, we can do the create movement chain whenever we update it, but I think that's still okay to do. Okay, the interactions aren't going to use the template. They're going to use an array of... They're going to return a corresponding array for each one. This is going to be an array of interaction. Interactions from entity template incoming. Yeah, incoming. I can do that again. To an array of interactions. It's equal to, or interaction as interaction in template interactions. A lot of this is stream of consciousness, folks. If you do have questions or anything like that, or just want to chat with me, feel free to do so. Since I'm doing a lot of coding, I can get distracted, and it might take me a moment to notice what's happening in chat, but I will try to get to it as soon as I notice it. So we do result and interaction pool. Oh, we need to fix that. Project settings, auto loads. Set a path to it. It is globals, it is a pool, and it is the interaction pool. Click. Interaction pool dot create from the interaction. Result. So we do that twice. We set up the incoming and outgoing interactions. What time is it for me? It's about 5:20 p.m. 17:20 if you'd like to be, if you don't want to have a suffix on your time. I actually use that. I actually use, military or 24-hour time myself. My schedule is such that if I don't, and the clock doesn't have AM PM on it, I must then look outside and figure out which of the numbers is that. Okay, so we create the interactions when we create the entity. Then when we're colliding, so in each entity now, we want to create. So let's go into our blob. So one of its incoming interactions is a interaction die. And for the bullets, if their outgoing interactions is bullet hit. Does it explode? Type. Reload. Hello there, Hayden. That's right, Sea Lantern. On the plus side, we're not using C++ or something like that, so at least it's not a segment fault. And I believe that's JM, right? Hayden, do you make Godzilla parody videos or something? As I see, it's Hayden Godzilla edits. we get a couple of folks through here that are on UK time, Shotgun? Or later European times? Not familiar, Shotgun. Not familiar with this with that channel. How is a null getting in there? Because I shouldn't be able to have nulls. It's a for in. Ah, okay, Jam. I am almost certainly going to forget that. As I've mentioned before, name changes in infrequency of visit both slow my memory of folks swinging through or disrupt it. So do not be offended if that happens. My memory for people can be spotty. How is a null getting in there? We should not be able to get a null in here. Of create. Oh. Create takes a template. I was passing in the wrong object, so since it couldn't cast properly, or at least this does count as an interaction, but it was null. It hasn't been set yet. It's passing in the wrong value. Interaction does not have an initialize. What do we do about that in movement? Cat's crawling all over me at the moment, folks. This guy is on my lap and Sherbet's on my headrest. Let's see here. All of those are default to it. So for the purpose of the interaction pool, we're just going to call that. Okay, so we're not getting the interaction we want there. I think, do we not have that set up at all? So in our entity, I'm going to go to handle collision. I have incoming and outgoing set properly. So incoming, we have interaction die, and outgoing, we have that. Oh. No, that's correct. That's correct. This one in outgoing, we have interaction bullet hit. And then an interaction bullet hit. We have this. Wait. Okay, that's why. Quick break. I will be right back, and then we'll correct this bug. And we're back. Okay, so it's the remove me call is failing, which is an entity. And the remove me signal. We need to send self. Boop. Now the bullets don't currently have that, but we can change that as well. Starter tips for Godot. Godot actually has a really good tutorial. You can download the assets for the tutorial, or you can just start with it and fill in your own images and whatnot. But yeah, it's like their online documentation has a great starter project. From there, just like with Unity, you have a whole lot of default tools for simple games. The only reason that we've had to make this as complicated as we have, as far as rendering and whatnot, is I need a lot of things on screen at once. Like, this is tame. I don't know if the editor is on mobile. You can compile to be mobile friendly. Okay, So this is where initialization is going to be useful. Yeah. So if we go into an interact, is aiming fixed? Not universally, maybe. There is still something that I want to change as far as aiming, and that's right now, if I have multiple, like, change your targets in a string of movement, in a movement chain, the resultant direction at the very end of it ends up being what's passed in, and most of the direction logic forcibly respects what is passed in for the purposes of positioning, like a spread or a starburst kind of pattern. There might have to be a different way that I go about that in order to make it so that the randoms can still take effect, but we'll see. All right, so we have initialize. And by default, there's nothing there. And in the subsequent ones, have a function initialize. Integer is equal to 1. So then in our interaction pool, when we get one, we always do interaction dot initialize. We need to make sure that we did that right. We do super. We do this so that we can have layers of it. Each child class needs to call super and then what it does. So then handle deliver result. If result is equal to constants interaction accepted, then left is equals 1. If it's left, well, let's get this in here. We need to know what the entity is during handle deliver result. Entity. All right. Handle receive. We get the target. We should do that other order. Consistency. Deliver result goes like this. Hello, Sky. This guy got up in my face in between me and the camera. Huh. That's cool, Cheesy. I was not aware there was a actual mobile IDE for it. Equals 2. If hits are less than or equal to 0, target dot send remove signal. But so when we're getting the payload, this is not quite right. So when we receive a signal, we have an override to handle it. We want a... In the case of a sender, we should have a method for not sending. So when it calls, this is going through and saying always call deliver. Yeah, I'd really suggest looking up some of the tutorials in the Godot documentation and starting from there. Okay, so in the interaction, okay, we should have an internal for should send message. So if there's a target, end should deliver. Sammy and Sherbet are playing behind me. Let's see if we can spot them. They might end up being visible on the 6th camera for tall format and the lower left camera for wide format. Let's see if they pass through. They are currently kind of to the above, actually below the heating pad on the white table. I guess they won't. I guess they don't want to show themselves. Very expertly dodging the camera. It's needs to have hits left. If it's out of hits, it does not deliver the payload. It does not try to cause damage. Really, I suggest you try those tutorials. There are a lot of different objects to work with. There is a default player object, but how you set it up does have some nuance based on what kind of thing you're trying to create. Yes, that will help. There are things like getting started in those things. Okay, and then let's start with this. Its left is 1. Step over it. Oh. No. Target should be sending the remove signal. Step into that. It's going to send that signal. This is the same as if wait. Oh. It's not the target. Okay. So this is what's going wrong. When we're delivering the results, this shouldn't be what I'm aiming at. This needs to be what sent the interaction. Where it's going, where it's coming from. Then in interaction, handle should also have source. So then, let's see. We also need a source in this one. Let's handle deliver, and in receive interaction, we also need the source entity. The only way to learn with coding in a new platform or a new language is going to be to do it. You just have to get started. When we started this project, when we started coding this on stream, I had 0 experience with Godot engine. We have been learning as we go. So that when the entity handles collision, we need to also pass in self. Hey there, demon. Welcome. Bullet collision. Is also source as an entity. You should be able to search in the docs for a getting started or a tutorial or something like that. That is, my streams do happen pretty late for a lot of folks. Receive interaction. I don't know that with a receive we know where it's coming from. But deliver, we have that. Receive should have target, source type, and payload. Receive interaction in entity. Entity handle collision. That's who we collided with and us. That's where it starts. It's always who is the receiving party and who is the where is it coming from? Receive interaction now takes 4 values. Reload the project on this. target source and okay, so we're still getting multi-hits. Okay, but that's because the die interaction... no, the die interaction should always be sending unaccepted. Oh. Initialize. All the super function, and then we have variable boolean is false. If not dead. Checked it. Okay, what we had to change around is that the die interaction doesn't always accept. If it's already triggered, then it won't do it again. Oops. We forget. Dead. False. So we can reuse them this way. Multi-hit solved. Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely, lovely. Demonstrate this further. Physics. No, no, no. We are going to spawn the blobs 10 times a second. And we are going to make our bullets the pattern spread be 60 with 10 projectiles. We need more blobs. I think we're still getting multi-hits in there. Yeah, we're definitely getting multi-hits. One, I don't know what to tell you, Cheesy, as far as learning an engine. It's, again, you got to learn by doing. You got to learn from information that is available to you. If you can't do that, you're going to have a hard time. As far as startup screens, all of this is placeholder stuff. None of this is meant to be end state at this time. We are still testing. We're still in the skeletal stage. We have the spawn rate jacked up because I want to get the collision handling to properly function. We should be wiping out 10 blobs at once because the projectiles should not be colliding that often. Needs to get an interaction accepted to reduce the number of hits and remove it. We don't have a delta in this either. We need an interaction accepted to remove it. When a collision die happens, I mean, I would suspect trying to use an IDE on a cell phone would be really difficult. By default, it rejects the interaction. I mean, even using a tablet, do you have a mouse and keyboard attached to it? At the very least, a keyboard? I don't know how you'd... Why is this triggering this way? By default, it's not dead, and it resets dead at the beginning of its existence. Are we getting a race condition? Shouldn't be possible. Theory, we could be getting multiple delivers, but question is, how are we getting multiple things colliding at once? The blobs do not stack on top of each other, so we should never get a circumstance where multiple of the mice spawning are hitting the same thing. I do think we need to have delta in here somehow. We currently have the idea of iframes baked into it. Let's call begin iframes on no matter what in an interaction die. Let us... I need them to spawn quickly, but I don't want them spawning too quickly. Let's see, they spawn on the spawner, so let's then do edit spread. Take that, we'll go 10 at a time, and we'll do it once every second to we currently do have the possibility of the iframe blocking the hit, but I think we're okay. I think we're doing okay for that. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go into some of these. Zero. Damage. And then that. Okay. So then in bullet hit, we send the damage payload. So we're going to do in our interaction, collapse all of these. Take this whole mess here. We're going to make a new interaction. Interaction. We're actually going to have... We're going to specify that enemies take damage differently for the time being. Enemy take damage. Okay. It doesn't handle deliver results. It doesn't have a payload or a payload type because it's a receive. Thank you, Sea Lantern. Thank you. That would have driven me up the wall if I would have seen it later. We need a type. Oh, I forget. This one has a set template values. If you're wondering why you see underscores in the names of functions, Godot compiler syntax is it will give you a warning if a variable is not used, unless that parameter, I'm sorry, if a parameter is not used, unless that parameter has an underscore in front of its name. That's primarily for parent classes, like for functions intended to be overwritten, you know? Hello, Drew. Doing well. I'm doing well. Set the template values for this one. Is equal to 0. Float 0. When we initialize, we say health is equal to base health. First, we call the super function just to be sure. We're setting this base health template base health. then we need interaction type for this one. Oh, I acknowledge you, Sherbet, but boy, you have... Sherbet doesn't let me clip his claws. He is really skittish. Sammy is second most skittish. I can usually clip a couple of paws, or at least a couple of digits before she really squirms away. But Sherbet won't let me try at all. So he has full-on murder mitts. Means when he is happily trying to make biscuits on my shoulder, it hurts. So this is going to be an interaction type for that. Okay, so if need to make sure we're doing that properly. In an interaction, when we... Okay, we're sending payload type in. So the interaction in handle receive, this is a payload type. Good. If the type is constant, interaction, payload type damage, then our result is an int, which is equal to rejected by default. Return result. Well, hello, Sherbet. Yes. I acknowledge you. It's crawling down in front of me here. He will usually not do that. He will usually not crawl down my lap. He usually hops onto the headrest, gets pet, and then hops off. He's being very sociable. He's probably going to go back to resenting me a great deal come tomorrow, because he has a vet appointment tomorrow, which means I will need to ambush him, scruff him, and put him in a carrier. He will have a bad time on the car trip, he'll have a bad time at the vet, and he'll get back and he'll be very unhappy with me. Is accepted, and if it is accepted, okay, so we know that the payload is a damage type in this case. A payload damage is equal to payload as a payload damage. If we have a damage payload at this point, then we're going to say health minus equals the damage payload dot damage amount. if health less than or equal to 0, then we are going to say our target send remove signal. Regardless of this, we are going to say target dot start iframes, begin iframes. So if we take a hit, so if we accept this interaction, then we will see if it's a damage type. I'm sorry, we'll see if it's a damage type. If it is, we accept the interaction. No, we need to move this down. We need to get a damage payload. So we get a damage payload, we reduce health accordingly. If health is below 0, we're going to tell the thing receiving it, the thing that is receiving this message, that it should go away. This is why the player taking damage is going to be different, because the player losing all of their HP is a completely different process. Even the player taking damage could result in altered calculations. Okay, so then instead of die, we're going to go into a blob, and we are going to move that. We're going to add an interaction enemy take damage. We're going to start, it has 1 HP. And we're going to go into the bullet. And in this bullet hit, we're going to say it has 1 hit and it does 1 damage. So this is auto-removing. All right, now we're going to go into the blobs, and we're going to say that they have 2 HP. Well, they're still getting wiped out in 1 hit. This is interesting. This should only be doing 1 damage to them. And if they take a hit, their iframes begin. So they begin their iframes as soon as they get a damage payload. Bullet hit. Take damage. They're initialized, they set base health, which is imported. Let's... Okay. This should only ever happen when an actual hit happens, so... Okay. Result of 0. Our type coming in is damage type. Payload and our damage payload are now the same entity. Our health and base health. We take the hit. And we begin the target's iframes. Oh, which is half a second, but they should be removed by then. They should be removed by then, but I have no guarantee. But let's add a failsafe in here. Okay, it is working. They were getting hit by multiple projectiles at once. Also, the failsafe might be in there, but all right. Now we're going to go into our mouse template, and we're going to really exaggerate this. We're going to say they can go through 10 targets. Okay, those bullets are multi-hitting them right now. We need a good way to make sure that the bullets' iframes are so it begins iframes. Regardless. And right now, iframes is half a second. Let's just test here. Actually, we can do a better test. Let us are going to reduce the spread so we can see further targets more easily. Let's lower that back down to half a second. The hitbox can be a bit tricky on these, so let's limit them down to 2. So we can really see it. Yep. Okay. Okay, so this is the basis for how much health an enemy has, how much damage a projectile does, and how many targets a projectile can go through. Which means we can set up modifiers for this kind of thing. This is the default logic for a given projectile. So, given the way that we're moving towards it, we are saying that projectiles... Here, let's up that back up so we can continue to really see it. The base logic for a projectile or for weapon currently, as far as the kind of longer term design that I've got in mind, is that a projectile will have a base set of statistics and a base kind of movement that it does. If, for example, a projectile, so the homing mouse, this is eventually going to be a homing thing. I've got to get the logic in there for targeting a random monster, not a random direction. The homing mouse will always start with a base damage of whatever, and it will have a base movement type in speed. Those are fixed. No matter what, the homing mouse will start with that. You can subsequently modify it. So here, let's remove the spread. So they spawn on player, they move in a straight line. Let's add in a curve. So we can see they're kind of weaving around. S-curve is a wave pattern, which can be influenced by multipliers and changes there. So you could add in an S-curve, and now it's trying to home to the target, but it will wobble up and down as it does. Or we're going to move in an orbit. Move in a spiral, but that spiral will have a range of 2. We have full movement chain. Spiral still has an idiosyncrasy I need to work out, Tass. But we have a full movement chain, but we also have the basis for damage. If you watch, the mouse doesn't auto-kill. Actually, we got to get rid of that move straight line if we really want to see the orbit. The mouse is currently doing 1 damage and can pierce 10 targets. The blobs have 2 HP. So you can see some of the blobs being knocked out. Pretty good, pretty good. So our next concept is going to be that we're going to have we need to create a object that is a given upgrade. It's going to be a debugging object, but what it will do is select an upgrade when it is created, or potentially when it's impacted. It selects a random upgrade and attaches it to the player's weapon. And this is going to be where things get interesting, because we need a way that we're going to be building the structure for doing that. I feel like that's a future Newt problem for now. I feel like that's where we're going to pick up in our next stream. But we've actually come a long way here. We have templating for it. We have the concept of how information is delivered. So, summarizing for folks that have arrived later. Bullet hit is a delivering payload. You are a delivering interaction. You only want to put it in outgoing. So what it will do, it will always say it will say it should deliver if it still has hits left. When it's set out to deliver, when it's told to actually deliver, it is going to say, did it get accepted? Did the payload that it created get accepted? Its payload is a damage type. payload damage here. It sets the damage. It tells it, I'm a damage type payload, sends it along. If anything said, hey, I did something with that payload, we're going to decrease the number of hits by 1, and we're going to tell the source object to go away if its hits are less than 0. And then we're going to begin iframes, just to be sure. Even if something ignored the projectile, we're not going to check again for half a second. Then on the recipient side, so if a monster gets hit, it's going to say, is it damage and do I have health remaining? If I do, I'm going to check and verify that the payload is a damage type. If it's not, we're not going to do anything. If it is, we take the damage, we see if we should die. So the scripts are resources there, Sea Lantern. Let me show you. By default, let's just grab target player. So it extends a movement type. A movement type is a resource. There's also positioners for things like spread shots. That's a resource, so we can treat it as a script object that we can pass around and say, like, another resource. The weapon, this is the default template for, say, like, our testing mouse. It has values in here. We're not going to be able to test the fixed values yet. You can't change these values. But what we'll do is that copy of a template, we're going to have extras to it. So when we go into our entity, well, we will effectively recreate the movement chain using an altered collection. I do need to make sure that I don't create too many templates. So when we create the movement chain, we're probably going to remove the template to use and instead pass in the template's movement array. Then inside the entity, we can say, oh, look, I have modified, I have extra movements, or I have an altered movement collection. Use that instead. That way we can still keep the default values, or we'll store off the default in the entity. And then we can add these after. But we'll rebuild the chain accordingly. Yeah. I think that should work. There will be some fiddliness, though. We need to have logic for adding it, for changing the chain, because longer term, you're not just going to get one and it's not just going to jam it in there randomly. It's going to, you obtain it, it's an object, and I can slot it in whatever position I want. That way we can start getting some variable behaviors, and you can start making choices about how it functions. And we'll go from there. Should be good. But that's why I want to have this one as our subsequent stream, because there's probably going to be some time speculating on how it should work. Hey there, Tabby, and hello, G-Man. We are just in the process of wrapping up today. Let me just show everybody where we are. We're going to make something gratuitous real quick. How about... So we have a random direction. Let's remove random direction. We've got an orbit, but let's start with a spiral. Then we're going to orbit. Let's have the spiral be faster. Only the spiral portion of it. So we're going to do a speed multiplier of 2. So the spiral moves quicker. I'm sorry, the orbit will move quicker than the spiral. And then we're going to go into the game. And we're going to do that. It should be pretty bonkers. I think we need random direction in there still. Oh, no, we can do better. Spawn on the player, but we're going to use a spread. We're going to make it a 360 spread, so it does a burst instead, and we'll do 10 at once. This might start some lag. Oh, yeah. We have too much going on at once. I will need to make sure that we're hitting our... that we're definitely hitting performance properly. That's too much. Let's slow that down a little bit, and we'll make sure that we're not spawning too many. So this is a spiral into an orbit. But if we do... How about we move the spiral to be the faster one, and we're going to start with the orbit. I mean, that's kind of what we're going for, Lore. So we see if you do orbit first, it tightens it up. For reference, an orbit is a spiral that will only spiral out so far. Then, if we're feeling extra spicy here, let's do a... We're going to do a burst of 90. We're going to do 5 of them at once. It's random direction, move straight line. So we will activate the yarn balls as well. You know, they're going to move in a straight line, but we're going to add an S-curve to them. Yeah. So this is where we've come along. We have our variant movement patterns. We have the ability to spawn a lot of projectiles, and we have the ability to inflict damage and have enemies react accordingly. Let's see. Actual movement is controlled by a combination of the physics server and the navigation server. In particular, we're pretty much only using the physics servers handling collision, which should be on a separate thread, and I believe the navigation server is on a separate thread. Really, only the monsters use the navigation server to its purpose, and that monsters avoid each other. They try to move around each other. Projectiles don't. So we should have threaded processes. When we're creating a whole bunch of things, a problem that we run into is garbage collection. Like, really fast, we run into garbage collection problems. So let's see if we can ramp things up by going into constants, and we're going to set our base pool limit. We're going to say you have to have 100 things in the pool before we start reusing them. We're going to create up to the point where we have 100, and from then on, we can pull from it. And what I want to do then is increase 10 here and template 4. We have a 360 spread of 10. So we're doubling the number of projectiles. So this number here, this middle number, is the size of the pool of entities. We want that number to never hit 0. If it hits 0, we start having problems. We start having to create new entities really fast. And creating or deleting entities is expensive. Okay, what I interpreted from that was to go a little faster. More projectiles. Oh, nope. Okay, it's reasonable that this slows down, I think. But we do need to keep an eye on this. We need to keep a careful eye on this. Actually, further testing. Further testing. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. All right. One more test. One more test. We're spawning a bunch of blobs at once, but instead we're going to spawn blobs fast. We were doing 10 blobs every 1 second. Now we're going to do a lot of blobs, 20 blobs a second. Now, blobs are more expensive. Blobs actually do the navigation logic. But we are directly using the physics server, the navigation server, and the rendering server. We are using those directly. We're not using the core Godot logic. We're not using, like, node logic. But yeah, we've got 30 projectiles spawning twice a second, and we have 20 blobs appearing and moving in every second. Yeah. I think we're in good shape so far. We just need to keep an eye on this performance. Oh, lovely. But this is the kind of thing we want to be able to do. We want to make it so that every time you add a power-up to a weapon, you are either increasing its efficacy or potentially making it less useful. And that's where learning the system and learning how it creates things is going to come into play. In theory. Oh, but let's do our full wrap up today. Again, we have a fully functioning interaction system now. We can have projectiles do damage. We can have monsters take damage. We don't have it where the monsters do damage or the player takes damage yet, but that's not really where we are in the process at the moment. But yeah, yeah, we are in position to make this work. Next up is the upgrading system. We're going to start with a very bare bones version where I'm probably just going to have it add to the end of the chain every time you pick one up. It's going to be when you pick it up so that we can control exactly when it happens and verify that it is happening properly. Yeah, should be good. Should be good. Now, our next scheduled stream should be on Tuesday. We're primarily doing game development, but I am trying to weave some gaming streams in again. So we might add something else in there. But again, I want to thank everybody for watching. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, follow, subscribe. In addition to potentially seeing more of my streams, which would be good, you might see other streams like this or in general like what you like. But okay, I hope everybody, again, has a good day. Again, has a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.